Zar and I met at umpire school, and we were fast friends, as you might imagine. I remember the first time I met him, and I was mispronouncing his name. So he asked me, "What do you call a Russian can?" I said, "A Zar." "Yeah, that's me. Just lose the law."
Wow.
Well, it definitely broke the ice and got the conversation rolling. Never quite really stopped. Our friendship just kept going and going and going. But one of his favorite sayings was that perception is reality. And that it's not about what you're doing, it's about what other perceives that you're doing. And how they think you're doing it, that's actually what it is. And because of that, he worked harder than anybody I've ever met at everything. At his base in front of you, at being an umpire on the baseball field. I mean, there were two crazy people that would go to Bloomington Middle School by themselves on a baseball diamond, just the two of us, and picture plays and try and figure out where the best position to be would be. That was Zar. Every once in a while, after working a game with somebody might ask, about positioning or mechanics or something. And Zar would say, let me get back to you on the time, we'll get together. Now, he did not have the time to do this. He found the time to do this. He found the time, somehow, to coordinate his schedule, my schedule, that person's schedule, and we'd go out on that field. Whether it was practicing the mechanics, teaching an umpire three-man for the first time, or just giving it one more try and going over how to use rulebook terminology because somebody just needed a little practice. He found the time. Not everybody would find the time for you, but Zar always found the time.
Only early morning.
This work ethic of his that I speak of, it inevitably showed up every time he was on the field. And it wasn't just in him that it showed up. Somehow it showed up in each and every one of his partners every game, in the players for both teams, because somehow the entire game just got that much better. I have no clue what it was. I don't have words to describe this, but it seemed like Zar, his partner in both of the teams, played a better game of baseball and umpired a better game of baseball whenever he was out there with you. And that was something he always took pride in. Making sure that today's game was the most important game to him. Because it was the most important game to whoever was on that field that day. And it really, really was important. The perception that people had of Zar at a game was one of professionalism. But somehow there was a professionalism where you had fun. Not everybody can pull that one off. It took me years to get to the point where I felt I was quasi-professional. And then I had to try and figure out how to add a little fun in there. That took a whole nother set of years. Zar somehow managed to do that naturally right off the bat. He would smile whenever a ball boy or a bat girl would bring two baseballs to him. Well, I shouldn't say two, because he always said 3 more, please. 3. 3 more baseballs, please. 3. It was never 2. Never. We had a long discussion about that. I remember. And inevitably, after the game, the parent of that young ball boy or bat girl would make a point of coming up to Zar and saying, "Thank you for being so nice and having a smile to my son or daughter," because frankly, as umpires, we get in the zone and sometimes we don't even think there's a little boy or a little girl bringing us those baseballs and don't even realize that, we should be trying to make it fun for them. One of the things that I'm not sure many people would know, because you probably weren't watching Zar after a game, is that he would find $2 to put in his pocket before every game. If there was a bat boy or a ball girl, or both, at the end of each game, he would make a point of having learned that bat boy or ball girl's name, finding them, and giving them $1 to say thank you for a job well done. He did not have to do that. That was Zar. He wanted to do that. He wanted to make sure the next generation to come of hopefully the next baseball or softball or whatever you were going to do had fun that day when he was out there. He's one of the few people who I can say genuinely enjoyed working every game he ever umpired. He might gripe about it. He might tell me later, "Man, that was not the most fun I had on a baseball field ever." I'm just telling you, Josh, it wasn't. They just weren't on it today. I don't know what to say. I've had more fun. And then I'd go, "Did you have fun?" "Of course. I always have fun." I don't think he would have kept going out there if he wasn't having fun. I know the last couple of years he kept fighting through a couple of, first it was a knee surgery, then it was a back surgery, to try and get back on the diamond. He made it for 1 game 1 year. I remember that Larry Gallagher was there evaluating his partner, who was brand new to Northwest umpires. And Zar had every kind of wacky play he could have on the bases. He called it interference, he called it obstruction, he called something else. And somehow he pulled a muscle during the course of that. But he was in US Bank Stadium, so there was a doubleheader. He wasn't done, so he had to suit up and go work the dish. Well, he suited up. It's funny. One of the notes Larry had for him was that, "You need to get out. You didn't get out as far as you usually do on a fly ball." And so I went, "Yeah, I kind of tweaked the muscle in that first one." And Larry looked at it and went, "You got out that far with a tweaked muscle?" "I don't get out that far without a tweaked muscle. And I didn't when I was your age." Larry happens to be in his 70s these days, but he still goes ahead and evaluates for us. It's interesting. I think Zar was telling me about the first time he went out to Brownton. And he gave me a call on the ride home. He was like, "Josh, I don't know, but I may have been the first black umpire these people have ever seen." And I'm like, "Wait, what do you mean?" "I got more sideways glances and odd looks before this game started than you would have ever seen anywhere." I said, "I can believe that. That's an hour and change outside of where you live. I can believe this." "How long?" That's all I asked, was how long. He said, "How long what?" "Before they were looking you in the eye and saying good job." He said, "Oh, they were looking me in the eye about the 3rd inning. Took 3 innings for a town that had never seen a black umpire, or at least it sure seemed that way to Zar, for him to win them over." the next day was actually really funny. Zar gave me a call, I forget what I was doing, but he had gotten a call from our assigner, Jeff Schmidt. And he went, "What did you do out in Brownton?" And I said, "What do you mean? Did I do something wrong?" I said, "No, they want you back. Again, multiple times this year. Multiple times, okay? Now, we don't get requested multiple times to come back. This just does not happen, people, okay? You might be the best umpire on earth, but you do not get requested. Zar would get requested. Jeff later told him that this was not the first team that had called him requesting Zar for multiple games that year. So, he had finally decided, I want to know what's going on. So I think later that summer, Jeff finally decided he was going to work a game with Zar. I think it finally dawned on Jeff what was going on when he worked that game. He saw for himself that infectious personality that he would bring to the field. The fact that he always treated every game in front of him, that game right then and there, as the most important thing in the world to him. Because there was nothing else that could matter more. You had to block out whatever else was going on and drop it for the 2 hours. And with Zar, it almost always was 2 hours, unless there was some pitcher who really could not find the zone. And usually that was a pitching problem, not Zar, because let me tell you, he had one of the most consistent zones I've ever seen. There were people who would go, that was out, and he'd go, yeah. And he'd go, okay. The batter would say, okay, and acknowledge that as the truth. Now, when I would tell him that was out, they would go, and I would say, that was out. The player would go, what do you mean that was out? That's not. That was in. That's right here. That's not. That's outside. How are you calling that on me? You can't call that on me. I'd get a whole discussion. I'd have to bark at the guy. I know I've seen Billy have to bark at him, and a whole bunch of the other guys at Northwest have to bark at people too for the same thing. But when Zar said it, I don't know what it was, but they decided, yeah, that was okay. That must be what it is. Now, those requests were not always easy to deal with. Zar carried around this extra little bit of added pressure that he somehow put on himself by being so good that first time. And he always felt the need to not only live up to it, but surpass that last outing. Which is why he was going out on that baseball diamond with me fighting over 6 inches. It's better to be here looking at it than here. No, I'm literally talking about 6 inches. That's what we would discuss, because you can't get the right angle to be over here. It has to be 6 inches over there. And he was the only one who would do that over those 6 inches. Nobody else was stressing it. Nobody else was living up to that pressure that he put on himself of having to come back for those games. You know, I will always appreciate the first thing that Zar drilled into me early on. If you're going to have to talk to a coach, there are literally 2 words you would say to me. Rule book terminology. No, use rule book terminology, Josh. No, you're going to say it how you practice it when we talk about it off the field. Answer in rule book terminology. And why do you do that? Because when you answer a coach in rule book terminology, all of a sudden you sound like this strange thing, which is a 60-page rule book from who knows how old. Okay, they started changing it recently, but you get the idea. And it just sounds like something they've read once. And it sounds just off enough to be efficient. Because the runner didn't become safe when he went past the base. The runner became safe when his foot impacted with the bag before the fielder had control and possession of the ball. Yes. We just described the same thing 2 different ways. One had rulebook terminology, and a coach will look at you like, I don't know what he's looking at. And then you all of a sudden are seeing him walk back, kind of, you literally see it as walking, thinking, what did he just tell me? What was that? Yes, I'm sorry, Rebecca, I know you know more rulebook terminology than half the umpires and Northwest umpires, because Zar and I would practice it that often. I'm sorry. So most of you know this already, but he genuinely was appreciative of the fact that he got to be a part of the Minnesota baseball community. He felt special and honored that he was allowed to be one of the umpires to come out to that game. It wasn't, all right, good, I'm going out there in the buck and I'm going home. I'll do whatever I have to do and then I'm going home. He genuinely felt honored to be up on that field. The trip to the game, the first couple of years he was here, the trip to the game in the Zarmobile, which was a conversion van with a raised roof, 2 captain's chairs in the middle. You'd get to the game field. Okay, we finally got there after the trip. You guys be talking, jamming out the music the entire way. You'd crank the tunes when you got there. And now on one of these cold Minnesota days, in the early spring, in March or April, when it can be cold out there, but we do have a game. And you do have to get changed. You got to do it in a conversion van, with the heat on, with the tunes going, and he might have even taken one of the DVDs of a music thing and put it up on the mini TV that he had in that conversion van while you were dressing. Mind you, he always had to make sure he had a big watch right there to kind of keep an eye on the time. Okay, maybe that's a little loose because we all know the time, but he was keeping a half of an eye on it. It's the only person who ever did that. That trip, the game itself, the fans cheering for their team, even if it was against him, them coming up to him and saying, that was a good job. Well done. Which doesn't happen to most of us. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. I know I got it, I think, once. Maybe twice. And I think the second time was because I was working a game with Zar and the guy felt bad. But, I didn't pull that off. Zar would pull that off at most games he was at. And the ride home from that game, all of those pieces, he enjoyed. Let me tell you about that ride home. He would call his wife first and let her know he's on his way. And then somehow he would find a way to get off the phone because he was going to give me a call on that ride home because we were going to compare notes about some weird defensive play, some weird umpire play, because we were not done talking baseball yet. Then we'd get home, he probably would eat a little bit, and then we might talk baseball some more just after the eating, and then hopefully we were done, we could give Zar back to his wife. Some nights it worked that way, other nights, not so much. So I got to look at some of the pictures on his phone recently. You might be surprised at what I found on there. There's a lot of stadiums here in Minnesota. We have a lot of them in almost every town. And I'm not saying it's just a ball field, it's actually a stadium. They want fans to be there, and you have a stadium enough that people actually can come and get a stadium experience. He was going to the stadium for the first time. He found a way, if he could, to get there 5 minutes early. And he would kind of just go around the field with his phone out, trying to discreetly snap pictures. Because I found more pictures of more baseball fields in Minnesota than I think I knew existed. And I've been to quite a few. I went many places working for Northwest. And I saw some stadiums that I had never seen. That stadium game always had something extra for that much more enjoyment of working the game. One of the many things about him is that it was never just about him. I had moved back to New York, and my friend Tom and I had a crazy play in this league in New York. And Tom talked it over with me, but he wasn't sure that what I said was dead on. So he wanted to know who else we could call and talk it over with. I was like, well, we might be able to call Zar. So I'm sorry for whoever he took time from that day, but he took the time to grab the phone, go over that play with me and my friend in the car, help him out too, because Zar had that heart. It was the special kind of heart. He gave you what you needed. Not what he could afford to give you, but what you needed. And yes, there is a difference. What he could afford to give you was this much. What you needed could be a lot. But he always found a way to give it to you. If that meant he had to go do something extra, he went and did something extra. In this case, he took some time, used his still expert knowledge of the rules, and explained the situation, all the little details of it. And then Tom cracked this joke. And you heard coming over the phone this belly laugh. I can't describe Zar's belly laugh. If you made the man laugh, you know it. It is not something you can really describe, but it would echo and go on. And it was his own special thing. In any event, Zar had more than earned my respect, both on and off the field. He umpired at a higher level than I can imagine getting to, all while being a good dad to all four of his kids up here. Kelly, I'm sorry, but he was a dad to you a little bit earlier, and you weren't up here at that point. He found a way to find time for each one of you. He made sure that you each got a little bit of time on your own. I don't know how, because there wasn't time. He had a game that night or the next day, and there was a band gig that he was playing that weekend, which he was practicing for too. But he still snuck in however much time it was that you guys needed. And you spent that time with him. And I know. He never thought he had enough time to give you. He told me more than once, it's the only thing I regret. I don't have enough time for all of them. I just don't. There isn't enough time to get. I need 30 hours. I don't think 30 hours would have been enough for Zar. He had too much to give. He loved all of you. I, for one, will never forget a man who would do anything he could to help you out, whether that was on the field or off. Not even touching on who he was as a musician or anything else in his life. But these are all just pieces of what made Zar special. And to honor his specialness, I'm going to ask each and every one of you a favor. To use Zar as an inspiration, to try and be just a little bit better at everything we all do going forward. Because I know that he would feel honored to know that he was helping each of us continue his good works. We'll just say, today is a day for remembering a good person, a better umpire, a better friend, best friend, a brother really, who was taken too soon from all of us.